Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Caroline McGraw, and I'm with The Clearing, a non-12-step dual diagnosis residential addiction treatment center. Put in plain English, we teach you how to forgive yourself, heal, and recover so that you can alter your life for good. And today we're going to talk about exactly how you go about offering yourself forgiveness. So, why? Because to start off, the principles of spiritual psychology tell us that judgment is self-condemnation and self-forgiveness is freedom. I'll say that again. Judgment is self-condemnation and self-forgiveness is freedom. So it's pretty important. If we want to feel free in our lives, we need to learn how to go about offering ourselves forgiveness. But before we dive into the how, let's clarify our terms here. What do we mean by self-forgiveness? Our co-founder, Betsy Kelzer, who is in recovery herself, describes it this way. Self-forgiveness is the process by which we release ourselves for the judgments that we hold against ourselves. Because when we accept that we are the ones holding the judgment, we also see that we're the ones who can release it, and we're the ones who can set ourselves free. So that's the essence of self-forgiveness. It's realizing that the door feels locked, but we're the ones who have the keys in our hands. It's actually very empowering. So this is a process that you can learn from someone else, and I'm going to share the step-by-step actions that you can take, but ultimately this is within yourself. This is something only that you can offer to yourself. So couple of quick caveats, because you may be thinking, this all sounds too easy. Where does personal responsibility come into it? So just to clarify what self-forgiveness doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that everything you've ever done is fine. It's perfectly okay. There were no consequences. No, actions have consequences. It doesn't mean that you've never made a mistake. Rather, it's offering compassion to your past self, the self that made the mistake, and paving the way for a better future. Because really, that's the only thing that we can do. Beating ourselves up and staying in shame, that is not helpful and that is not constructive. And we actually know, both from our own experience and from the addiction research, that shame and addiction go hand in hand. Experiences of shame, be it as a result of trauma or just as a result of, absorbing the cultural messages that we're not good enough, shame and addiction are very strongly linked. If you have a lot of shame, there's a much higher % chance that you will develop some kind of substance or behavioral addiction. So self-forgiveness is a powerful antidote to the shame, and therefore a powerful way to prevent and treat addiction. So I also want to clarify that self-forgiveness is for everyone. It's not just if you're struggling with addiction. It can also be extremely helpful if you're dealing with mental health concerns such as depression, anxiety, and trauma. And the brilliant author Elizabeth Gilbert has this wonderful essay on forgiveness in which she illuminates the benefits. She talks about, how when you can't forgive yourself, you are stuck in this constant, debilitating, draining cycle of self-blame. I'll read her words because she says it really beautifully. Here is the mantra of the person who cannot forgive herself. You should have known better. You should have known better. You should have known better. And she writes about how she was furious at herself for not knowing something before she knew it. But if you really stop and think about that for a minute, does that make sense for you to abuse yourself for not having known something before you knew it? And she writes, this is so unfair to yourself, and that this may sound very simplistic, but you cannot know something before you know it. So your present self may judge your past self and think, oh my gosh, she should have known better. What was she thinking? But the truth of the matter is the past happened and you knew what you knew. You didn't know better until you did. And that solid ground is where you stand now. And that's what you live with going forward. You live with, okay, now I know better and now I do better, to paraphrase Maya Angelou. And the good news is that while you can't exactly go back and redo your past, you can change it in the sense that your present self can offer compassion to your past self And therefore, you can impact your past self through the medium of your present self. Pretty cool trick. So I'm going to give you some practical real world steps to follow if you want to do this and offer yourself forgiveness. So the first step is, as always, to center yourself in your loving heart. And if you've never done that, what that means is that you tap into a feeling of oneness, a feeling of connectedness and compassion. And to start, it doesn't have to be toward yourself if that feels too difficult. For me, a place I like to begin is with animals, actually, because that feels very safe for me. So I'll think about my cat, I'll think about my family's dog growing up. It's really easy for me to summon this feeling of love and connection towards those animals, towards those pets. It could also be a best friend that you've had your whole life, someone who you feel loves you unconditionally. So once you have that sensation of being centered in your loving heart, then you identify the judgments that you've held against yourself. And we've done whole separate videos on judgments and limiting beliefs, and I will link to those in the comments. But just really briefly, judgments are the statements that are causing you mental and emotional pain, and they are the things that you hold against yourself. So as an example, maybe it's, I should never have, driven drunk. That was so stupid of me. And the next step is to really forgive that judgment that you hold against yourself. So in this case, it would be, I forgive myself for judging myself as stupid. And the truth is, and then you put in that blank what love would say, what connection and compassion would say about you. And maybe the truth is that you were doing the best you could in that moment at that time. Maybe the truth is that you were in a lot of pain and you made a poor choice. And maybe the truth is that you've learned from it and that you're not the same person now that you were then. So play with it and see what feels true for you. And another good truth that comes up for me often is, the truth is that I didn't realize that I had another choice before, but now I have choices. And that can be a really powerful one, because as spiritual teacher Byron Katie talks about, if you truly believe that you don't have another option, then oftentimes you will do things that you'll look back on. You'll think, how could I have been so stupid? How could I have done that? But in that moment, you truly didn't see another way out. You didn't understand all of the infinite possibilities that were available to you. And so given the limited number of options you saw, you made the best choice that you knew how to make, even if in hindsight, you're thinking, man, of all the options, why did I pick that one? Because it was the only one you saw in that moment. If you would have seen a better option and a healthier option and felt that you could move toward that, you would have moved toward that. So then you also do the same process with the limiting beliefs that you have against yourself. So one might be, I'm a total loser. So again, you use the same framework. I forgive myself for accepting the limiting belief that I'm a total loser. And the truth going forward for me is that I'm infinitely valuable and infinitely loved. Of course, fill in the blank with what you feel rings true, but that's just one that popped up for me. And so basically, just to bring this all home, the purpose and the point of self-forgiveness is offering compassion to the vulnerable parts of yourself. It's offering love to the parts of yourself that hurt. Because the thing is, when you realize that you have the power to offer yourself forgiveness, you see that you have all these different aspects of yourself, right? You have the aspect that's doing the judging, and then you have the aspect that is in pain because of the judgment. But the amazing thing about self-forgiveness is that you also have the part of yourself that watches both of those parts and is sort of above and beyond those other parts. So that is the part of you that is tapped into spirit, into life, into the universe, into God, whatever you want to call it. And that part of you can offer forgiveness to the other parts of you. It's all you, but it all works together in this kind of beautiful and sort of mysterious way. But the thing I will do is dare you to try this, because I know it sounds very different if you hear someone else describe it versus if you actually sit and get still and practice offering yourself forgiveness. So I challenge you to actually do that. Don't just listen to it. Actually work with it. Take yourself through it. And before we wrap, I just want to check the comments because I see some people are writing in, which is great. Crease, I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right, but acceptance is the answer to all my problems. I hear you. Yes, because it's the part of you that is in resistance and is rejecting yourself that is causing you all of the pain and all the problems. So many of our problems are created in our minds. Obviously, if you have a lion chasing you, that is a real world, real life problem that you need to address. But if you're having a thought such as, I'm a total loser, nobody likes me, that's a problem you're creating inside your brain. So Christy gives us a thumbs up. Thank you, Christy. Anybody else, feel free to chime in and comment, and I will happily get back to you. And like I said, I will also post those other links to the videos on judgments and limiting beliefs in case you want to check those out as well. And as a final call to action, if you would like to connect with some like-minded people who are doing this work of self-forgiveness and who are healing from their addictions and their underlying core issues, we would love to have you join us in our free Facebook group called the Healing Underlying Core Issues Facebook group. And I will post a link to that in the comments as well. But until then, signing off, thank you for watching and have a great day.